Well, looks like a good contingency of folks have joined already. So, welcome everyone to today's virtual session here with Lyndsey, Brian, and Lonnie. My name is Courtney Nugent. I'm on the marketing team here at Blue Onion and really looking forward to today's conversation. I think a very timely conversation for end of November, approaching Black Friday, Cyber Monday, is talking about really the state of accounting right now and as we head into the new year. So, Blue Onion, a lot of you recently downloaded a report that we came out with about 2 weeks ago on the state of e-commerce accounting for 2026, and a lot of the challenges we're seeing across our customer base that we want to educate folks on and make sure people are aware of as they head into year-end close. And obviously very excited to have Lonnie here from Withum Advisory Partners, who is one of our close accounting partners, and we work really closely together on a number of our customers. So really excited to have both Lonnie's perspective and Lyndsey and Brian's today as we deep dive into what are those key topics or takeaways from the report that hopefully all of you have checked out prior to today. But if not, we're going to go through it live. So should be really helpful for you all too. So just a couple housekeeping items before we dive into the conversation. I'll be monitoring the chat and Q&A throughout the event, and we're going to save time at the end for Q&A. So I encourage folks to put your questions there as we're going through different topics, and I'll make sure that we prioritize those at the end and get these smart people's opinions and perspectives for the different challenges you're running into. There will also be a recording of this sent out tomorrow. So regardless of who's here live, we'll also send it out to folks that registered so you can go back and listen to it. And last but not least, encourage folks to download the full report, the state of e-commerce accounting, which is live on the Blue Onion site. If you go to our homepage, there's a banner that'll drive you right to it. We're going to cover the key topics, but there's a lot in there, and so encourage folks to spend some time going through it. But want to thank you all for joining, and without further ado, I think we can dive in. Let's go around the horn and do a quick update on who all is here as our presenters. Lyndsey, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, thanks for getting us started. My name is Lyndsey Bunting. I am one of the co-founders and CEO of Blue Onion. But I think probably a lot of you guys know this already. I come from the finance and accounting side of the world. Have such, I'm gonna say, like, passion, excitement, like just love it so much. I led finance and accounting at a company called Birchbox over, I'm going to say, a decade, which is a crazy thing to say, over 10 years ago. I've also worked with a lot of startups in New York, helping them build out their finance and accounting function, specifically within D2C and retail companies. And so just so excited to be here with you all today and to share, a lot of the learnings that we've seen over, I'm going to say, the last 6 to 12 months. And yeah, excited to be here with Brian and Lonnie as well.
Why don't you go ahead, Lonnie?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. Lonnie Bloom. I'm an audit partner at Withum. Withum's a full-service accounting firm, audit tax advisory. I've been at Withum for about 15 years, and I co-lead our e-commerce sector. So I sit within our technology emerging growth vertical, and within that is e-commerce. So I think I deal a lot with VC, PE-backed startups, from early stage through growth, a mix of private and public companies. And yeah, really excited to talk about the state of e-commerce accounting. We see a lot of articles about the state of e-commerce and trends, but this is taking a real deep dive into the accounting aspects, and I haven't seen any sort of publications like this. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk through this stuff.
Cool. And I'm Brian Webb. I'm our VP of Customer Experience and Product here. Have been at Blue Onion for coming up on 4 years now. I cut my teeth in finance in New York, which is not a fun place to start, which Lyndsey did the same thing. So we have that in common. Just love a real challenge, which is why I am here, is trying to take some of the complexity and some of the challenges that we'll talk about today and make some streamlined product that can help everybody here have a solution for it.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, hopefully for a lot of the Blue Onion customers on the line, Brian and Lyndsey well, and hopefully Lonnie, but if you don't, great to introduce you all today. So with that, let's dive into what we found in this year's report, really looking at the proprietary data we see at Blue Onion across our 200 plus e-commerce brand that we work with. And what we're really finding is things are changing fast, right? And with each of those changes becomes more compounding of a problem. So with this, Lyndsey, I'd love to turn it over to you to kind of set the scene of what we found here.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe even in taking a quick step back on why we did this report. So I will say, and I think Brian will agree, every time that we get onto a phone call with a prospect or with a customer, a lot of the question is, well, what are you guys seeing? Right. And what are your other customers seeing? And how should we be thinking about this? And are people experiencing, the same thing that we're experiencing? And so, as part of, our I'm going to say our product and planning process, right? We always want to make sure that Blue Onion is solving the pain points that are really the most acute, the top of mind, the most expensive to solve for our customers. And so we do a lot of these types of internal research and trying to dig in to see where things are not getting reconciled, where people are having challenges, and then being able to take that with all of the feedback and learnings that we get from all of our customers and prospects. We just wanted to be able to share that, right, with everyone here. And so hope that everybody finds this super helpful. And then Courtney, to your point, yeah, things are changing really quickly, right? I think that what we're starting to see is, just the pace and the acceleration of those changes. So one of the examples I always like to give is, when I was back at Birchbox, if we wanted to implement, let's say like a new type of discount, right? Like a 2-for-1 or a gift with purchase or something like that, it would require, engineers and data scientists and marketing teams and, like everybody. And we would talk about it like 3 months in advance, right? So that we could plan for it and do the whole thing. And now something like that can happen like in an hour, right? Maybe less. It's like a flip of a switch for a lot of you that are on Shopify as an example. And so we are just seeing a lot of the changes. And again, I think this comes from Shopify being such a powerful platform in addition to Amazon, right? And now we're seeing TikTok. So the changes and the different systems and tools that you can do and that marketing teams can do, it's incredible, right? Just how quickly things can move. But I think as a lot of people on this call appreciate, that then trickles down into the finance, the accounting side, the data side, right? And we're sort of left with, okay, all of these other changes happened upstream. How can we adjust for them, right? And like, are we aware of what's happening there? And so which challenge, right? I'm actually curious to hear from you guys too, of, what have you seen impacting your month-end close the most? So really, has it been, and we see it a lot too, right? Like Shopify makes some changes that maybe they don't really share or make public, right? And then we see that in the platform data. There are other adjustments, right? That maybe there were missing transactions or orders or cancellations that then impact prior periods. And obviously, as a lot of you guys know on the call, right, like from an accounting perspective, maybe those prior periods are closed. So how do you go back? How do you even know that they're happening? How do we adjust for them? New sales channels, constantly hearing about new sales channels, different applications, different payment processors of things that you guys are experimenting with. Or trying new markets too, right, in different currencies. Manual reconciliation, for our customers, I hope that, this isn't the actual thing. This is something obviously that at Blue Onion we solve and make automatic, but know that, right, there are other data sources that maybe we are not connected to. And so there still is some manual reconciliation that is happening there. And curious, maybe it's something else too. So curious to hear, maybe from the group, if there's one thing in particular. And Lonnie too, curious, like what you guys are maybe seeing on and it's maybe a little too early for audit, but what you've seen over the last year.
Yeah, it's interesting. You guys are certainly closer to the data with your clients, and with us from an audit perspective, we kind of see the aftermath of they're getting audit ready, they're giving us reconciliations, but they expected to close the books February 15th, and they need an extra month because there's manual reconciliation, there's post-close adjustments, their disparate systems don't really talk to each other, so it's just hard to pull together all that data. We see a lot of issues with RevRec, we see a lot of issues with inventory, and a lot of those small reconciliation issues that kind of build up and create, a bigger issue. So yeah, certainly I think the future of what we'll see is more investment in automation, more investment in AI tools and things to
Mhm.
automate this stuff. But yeah, the manual reconciliation is always a pain point for us.
Cool. Let's dive into the next section here. Sorry, just lost my place. There we go. All right, Brian, take it away. Let's talk through the kind of primary challenge we saw as a result of this, which is those silent platform shifts.
Yeah. So this is something that if you've been to any of our webinars lately or came to our event that with him, thank you, co-hosted with us in New York earlier this year, something that we've been really spending a lot of time around is just as we start to push the envelope of how quickly we're looking at this data, how soon after a month end or even intra-month we're looking at this, we start to see that this data moves around a lot more than we realized that when we were just looking at things like monthly with a week lag or 2 day lag or whatever that is, right? And so we see this with Shopify, right? There's maybe some potentially hidden taxes, or one that really comes up a lot is a marketing fee for promoting your product on Shopify's application. So a lot of times we'll have people reach out and say, "What's this $50 fee for selling my $75 product?" And we're like, "Well, that was your marketing team." And so finding those things out and helping to create visibility around those things, but those things do pop up kind of randomly and without like you guys knowing ahead of time. And so that's one thing that we are really passionate about here is just providing visibility and an ability to track those things. And then also, yeah, things around the fulfillment logic changes, or even just rising costs, right? Just seeing what is your net payout from something that you sell on Shopify versus what you sell on Amazon, and knowing what all your net profitability is on each of those. Those things can kind of quietly pick up across the life cycle of an order, and having those shift around is something that's we heard very hard to capture both in this report, but also we hear that, day to day working with our customers.
Awesome.
Cool. And data drift and reconciliation gaps is really a bit of a riff on some of that, right? Is what does that actually mean for me? Is one is now I have awareness of that, but what does that actually mean for me in terms of recording this? How do I actually take care of this in my month end? So a lot of our customers I'm going to start on the right hand side with Amazon specifically, right, is they're choosing to just defer to looking at their Amazon data until the settlement report, because that data is changing so much from the time of order to settlement. But as many of you on here might know, Amazon's only paying out every 2 weeks. So really choosing to have really delayed data because these data drifts are happening, or these shifts in information are happening so readily that you kind of throw your hands up and say, I don't want to deal with all those shifts. Let me just deal with that as it's at settlement. And so that is one thing that I am really proud of our team here that we just launched this week is our smart adjustments. So somewhat of a shameless plug here in the middle. I'll call it what it is. But I don't have any shame on the work that we're doing here. I think it's a really great feature that we're putting out here is to allow you guys to not have to choose between recency or accuracy, right? Is you can still choose to pick up all of this information in daily entries into NetSuite, QuickBooks, whatever your ERP is. But also then pick up any of those shifts as they're happening. So we'll create smart adjustments automatically for you that will then be able to be available for you to record this in your ERP. And so you can have that all of the available information that's there today, but also pick up changes that happen tomorrow, the next day, whenever they may come in, even as far as that settlement report that you might receive a few weeks later. So really excited for that. If you do have any questions, there's a big banner up in your application today. You can click on that if you're an existing customer. If you are a prospect, reach out to anyone here and happy to chat through that.
Some
Brian, there's definitely a need for this type of automation because it's real time. It's real time reconciliation and catching those issues and um, the silent shifts, right? All these platforms are changing their algorithms and codes, and the reporting is looking different. We're seeing our clients kind of talk about the pain points of this stuff in real time, and one of the big things for us, when the Shopify logic changes and the tax defaults change, and
You're
all of a
right.
sudden you stop collecting and remitting sales tax on a certain SKU or product line, you're opening yourself up for some major exposure. And
Yeah.
that's a question we get so often in diligence. If you're selling your business, you might not even realize for a month, 2 months, 6 months, maybe you haven't been collecting and remitting sales tax, and now you have this big exposure, and you have to do a nexus analysis, and there's potential loss there. So this is certainly a need for something like this in the market.
Yeah, appreciate the insight there, Lonnie. And I also think something that's really exciting here is we built this report off of our internal data, what we see here, right? But along with the smart adjustments, what we've really changed underneath the hood is that every single day we're taking what we call snapshots. So now we have like a change log essentially of like what did your data look like 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 5 months ago. And so detecting changes like you're talking about there, Lonnie, can become a lot easier. And so we're applying that now to what we support today. But I know we've talked with some members of your SALT team even about some sales tax types of reporting that could be available under this framework as well.
Awesome. With that, Lonnie, I'd love to hear your perspective, with your e-commerce clients specifically and what you're seeing happen with TikTok.
Yeah, it's definitely something new and interesting, keeping everyone excited about the e-commerce world. Historically, we've audited, omni-channel e-com companies. You're selling D2C through your website, you're selling on Amazon, you're selling in big box retailers. Now there's TikTok. TikTok is exploding. We're expecting to see a lot more of it from a revenue stream perspective this year. Maybe it's not a material revenue stream, but it's certainly growing. So TikTok's a social commerce platform, right? So with TikTok, it kind of merges entertainment, social engagement, and e-commerce. So it's not just, it's based on viral content rather than planned shopping, right? You go on TikTok and you see a video of something live stream that you can just purchase products from right there on your phone. So a lot of it is just um, based on trends, based on viral trends and influencer campaigns, making predicting and projecting sales pretty difficult. And then so what happens is there's an affiliate sellers network. So you're connecting sellers, brands with creators through TikTok. So sellers list their products and set a commission rate. So if you're an influencer, you can apply to promote those products, embed a clickable product tag in your video or live stream, and then TikTok will track that and then pay commissions after a certain return window, like a 15-day, 21-day post delivery return window. They're going to pay commissions off of that. To be one of those influencers, you have to have a number of followers, and it complicates things from a downstream accounting perspective because there's just so many different structures. The fee structures are much different, and they vary. So when you have brands using influencers, you have brands paying TikTok referral fees, and then you have additional fees for maybe products that are fulfilled by TikTok. There's logistics fees around that. You have different influencers based on tiers. There's influencer pricing. So, this whole new thing that I've been learning of like nano influencers and micro influencers, mid-tier, macro celebrities, right? There's a whole different tier of like, are you paying per post, for an influencer? Are you paying, per engagement, per click? And then you're paying commissions on top of that. You think of the complexity of that structure when it hits the accounting world and the finance team, it introduces a lot of, pretty big challenges. And they're growing because, every business is probably taking a look at TikTok forming teams. It's a big opportunity for brands, but it's also a big threat because there's, finance and accounting issues. And I would say it's also a big threat if you're not getting involved in TikTok because you're leaving money on the table. It's a revenue stream that is picking up, consumers are spending more time on TikTok, making purchases the way that, people aren't going to stores as much. You're making purchases online. based on your favorite influencers that you follow. But yeah, the downstream, the accounting, unpredictable revenue patterns. It's based on viral trends. You could post a video and it gains 5 million views overnight, and all of a sudden your revenue is through the roof. And then the next video flops, right? There's reconciliation challenges. You have weekly payout cycles and influencer commission splits, and there's like timing mismatches, right? Refunds and returns are harder to track. And then we kind of talked about that fee and commission structure. There's just a lot baked in there. And then also there's tax compliance. Where are you selling? Where are you tracking and remitting properly? And then what system are you using to track all this and account for it? That's where I think we're going to see a big opportunity for consultants, advisors, and maybe there may be a whole host of them to try and say I could solve your TikTok accounting issues. But I think there's important to invest in automation when you're spending so much time trying to reconcile all of these um, these new reports and the timing mismatches, et cetera. But yeah, I would say there's some things we could do. We could just be flexible as a team. Your accounting finance team would be aware that you have some new reports to look at. Make sure people are trained on it. Make sure you're accounting for those commissions to influencers appropriately, and then monitor for changes, because the reporting today is going to look different than reporting 3 months from now. And that's going to go with any platform you're on: Shopify, TikTok, Amazon. So you're going to be an omni-channel, working with several different revenue streams, several different channels, multiple different reports, and then one accounting team. So how do we make it all kind of work? So definitely a lot of challenges, but I am pretty bullish and excited about TikTok Shop in general. I think it's certainly a new way of consumers to purchase products from our clients.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see that on our customers, Lonnie, of just like we will have customers that come to us and say, "Hey, we're starting TikTok. Our marketing team told us we're doing that like yesterday, and they turned it on today." And so then it starts, and they're like, "Oh, it's very low volume." They have like one event, right? Like what you're saying is like it's very volatile. So then they don't invest in it. They're like, "Oh, it's less than 1% of our revenue." And then the next month they have something that goes viral and they're like, oh my goodness, we have no idea how to reconcile all of this. And so we see a lot of teams struggle with the sort of volatile nature that you're talking about there, and
Oh
just
yeah.
like the gap in reconciliation and lack of clarity that they have about what's going on there.
You never know when it's going to pop. And I just listened to a podcast that's dedicated to TikTok shops. And one of the influencers said, I bought a house in 6 months after being on TikTok shops because I posted a few videos that went viral, and now I have this huge following. And, think about the brands that are now promoting and trying to get that influencer's attention to sell their product. The revenues is spiking. They're can't really predict it either. You never know what a consumer is going to click on and really enjoy. It's interesting though.
Yeah.
It's funny, I actually spoke to a customer earlier this week. So I don't know, Brian, if I'm allowed to announce, but as we're working on our TikTok integration, right? But one of the things that, was really surprising to them is, we were going through some of the fees and they're like, this is more than 20% of my sales, right? But I think, Lonnie, to your point, right, of just like the complexity around the tiers, the different types of fees, right? So he's looking at it, comparing and saying, hey, here's what I typically pay for Shopify, for Facebook, right? Why is TikTok, way more, right, as a channel than that piece of it too, and Amazon as well. So I think it's even people just like when their marketing team turns it on, like those first couple months, just like even understanding, right? Like what's included, what's not included. Does this make sense from a cost perspective too?
Awesome. I can definitely relate because whenever we close a new client at Blue Onion, I'm on TikTok Shop purchasing their product. So I am the consumer complicating this for our customers. I apologize. With that, would love to get into the kind of last section within the report that we wanted to discuss today, which is about ERPs and really a reality check around ERPs and what we're seeing at Blue Onion with our customers. And Lonnie, I know you have some insights as well from your e-commerce clients, but Lyndsey, I'll turn it over to you to kick this off.
Yeah, definitely. I will say, what we haven't seen in the past, and I think we're starting to see more now, is that, the move to NetSuite is being heavily questioned. And so I think that looks like a few different things. One is, we're on QuickBooks. How do we make this last for us much longer? How do we use different maybe point solutions, right, to solve the main pain points, as opposed to doing a NetSuite implementation? Again, depending on the type of business, the size of the business, but I think people are thinking about like how can they stretch the dollars that they have. Obviously, the time commitment, right, can be pretty significant. And so, I'd say that's maybe the one thing that we hadn't seen in the past, where people are just maybe taking a second beat to say like, okay, is this year that we move to NetSuite? Are there other platforms that we should be considering? What about the integrations, right? Like as this ecosystem changes, evolves, right? Like the new app that's coming to do X, Y, and Z for payments, for orders, right? Like now those types of integrations become so important. And so I would say this is just, it's something that we haven't seen before. And I think, just curious, Lonnie, too, of like what you guys are seeing, in terms of ERP, NetSuite, QuickBooks, there are even some, I'm going to say there are even some old school ones that we're seeing coming back too. A2000 is one, which surprises me as well sometimes. But yeah, Lonnie, curious to hear what you guys are seeing.
Yeah, we have a lot of clients in QuickBooks that do kind of transition to NetSuite at a certain point when they're kind of outgrowing QuickBooks or they kind of go upstream. But we've seen sort of the same, a lot of questioning of, is it the right choice? Is it the right move? We know that an implementation of NetSuite can be costly and utilize a lot of our resources. I think about ERPs as just like, it's where you store all your data, where you base your financial decisions and management decisions from. So it's sort of this backbone of your finance, your HR function, your supply chain procurement. You're just talking to all these different systems. It kind of evolved over time from, ERPs back in the day are on-prem, out of the box kind of tools or these massive like implementations, deployments. Then they kind of moved to these cloud-based platforms, which are integrated with Shopify, Amazon, like all these different systems. But even with those integrations, it's really, relies heavily on manual input. You have batch updates and, it's just heavy manual reconciliations that go along with it. And like, that there's a learning curve too, the training around how do I operate in that ERP. So we've seen a lot of clients sort of entertain the idea of it, there's kind of these new AI native ERPs out there that, are AI enabled, have, kind of offer like an agentic AI where you have kind of autonomous agents, goal driven, being able to do full workflows. At least that's what's kind of the offer. And, we're kind of seeing AI evolve, which is going to be really interesting. But I think it's certainly an industry that's ripe for automation. You're dealing with numbers and boxes and reconciliation and matching system data to, other systems. So if it's going to not be as costly, if it's going to be integrated in 4 weeks rather than 4 months, and it's going to be faster, we were certainly seeing our clients sort of entertain that and think about going the AI native route. And the future of ERP in my mind is limit human interaction, have autonomous kind of systems, and you're able to limit your time and you're not spending so much time training and running reports and failing at running those reports and rerunning them. And so I think there's definitely going to be a shift in mindset as we kind of look out in the next few years.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Lonnie, definitely agree. And I think that's where, when we think about reconciliation and at the end of the day, right, what does the process of reconciliation get you? It gets you clean financial data on which you can start to build really meaningful AI powered workflows. Because I think that's maybe, talking to our customers and even, as we're, testing different features, one of the things, that we've seen is this financial data is so important. to how people operate their business, like the idea of hallucinations for certain things, right? Like, so where can we use AI in a way that it provides actual value? So we've tried to get away from, because we've seen it in a couple other systems, just like throwing in a chat bot, right? And being like, okay, now we have AI into our system. And so we try and work backwards from like, what is the job to be done for our customers? Like, where are the pain points? How can we deploy AI in a way that makes like the most sense for them, for their workflow, as opposed to just being maybe a thing that we like throw out there. But curious, Lenny, like what you've seen, because I think the other thing too is I've seen it a lot in SaaS, in terms of like these AI native ERPs. So we've seen a bunch like really focused specifically in SaaS. Curious if you've seen anything quite yet on like the e-commerce retail side. I think we're probably starting to hear a little bit more about it, but I'm going to say if you're a manufacturer, just the complexity around those processes. And then even if you do buy finished goods, the actual like physical inventory component seems to still be a little bit of a challenge. But yeah, curious to hear, what you've seen and also like what you're excited about too.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's really quite solved the inventory issue. There's a lot of like, software solutions out there. I've seen, I'm most excited about, ERPs that offer, the chatbot feature. I think every software is going to eventually have that. That's kind of like a table stake. It's going to be table stakes at a certain point. Have a chatbot that you could kind of help navigate your ERP. But it's going to take it a step further, right? I think
Yeah.
you're going to see ERPs where you have a chatbot. You go into the chatbot and you say, "Hey, what were my sales for this specific queue in this region in the last 3 weeks, and help me forecast for the next 3 months based on historic sales." And you're going to see, softwares kind of make that promise that you're going to have a one-stop shop, and it's going to really futurize your ERP. I think we're going to get there. Some people think it's going to be tomorrow. Others might say it's in three to 10 years. Who knows? But we're seeing a lot of, solutions out there kind of offer that. So there's solutions for, one specific problem, and then there's solutions that trying to solve everything. I think it's making sure you're kind of weighing your options, considering, because QuickBooks still works for folks. NetSuite still works for folks. But then there's this other kind of new exciting solution, and don't just jump right into it. You just have to definitely weigh out your options and know where is my biggest problem. Start with the problem statement, and then like to your point, Lyndsey, start there, right? What is my problem? What am I trying to solve? Because if you don't need to jump out of QuickBooks right away, why jump to something new? If you just need an add-on or something simple, but definitely excited about what the next couple of years have to bring.
Yeah, so are we. I think it's so funny. Like even when we started the company, there were all these things that we wanted to do in terms of how do we continue to bring more value to our customers? What are the different workflows, right, that we can help automate? I think for us, like with all of the, with AI coming out, like it's opened up the just blown off the door to like what we can possibly do, right? Where before it was a lot of things were rule-based, but now the concept of agentic AI, and to your point, right, of just like, maybe it's not even, asking questions and giving answers, but maybe it's like, "Hey, Lonnie, good morning. Did you see this thing, right? Like, are you thinking about this? Have you asked these questions?" And really, yeah, I think, yeah, we're so excited about it. And I think there's just a ton of opportunity within, building on top of, clean financial data. So Brian, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, I was just really interested, Lonnie, in your perspective of what you've seen with, I would say accounting and finance people tend to be not the most risk tolerant humans in
Right.
the world. And so, especially in like LinkedIn world, you see these very like disparate opinions where it's like people are like AI is going to save the world. And then you have a lot of the accounting and finance people that I see are like, you can't trust AI at all. Like, don't touch that. It's just financial data. I'd be curious on your perspective of what you see with your customers and like what does AI really mean in terms of adoption in the finance department that you've seen?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'm an auditor, and auditors by trade are more of the skeptics, I would say. I'm on the other side. I think I'm pretty bullish. I'm try to be a AI super user if I can. But yeah, there's a scale of skeptic to super user, and when it comes to financial data, I think the biggest thing is financial integrity and trust in the data. So when you have an AI bot or some sort of software to help you with a solution there, you have to make sure that you can trust that data. So for example, I used my AI chatbot to type out an email, and it gave me a date, and it typed out that email and said this December date is a Thursday, and I looked at the calendar, I was like, it's actually a Wednesday. So I don't now I'm a little more skeptical. I don't really trust it. So um, I think in finance, you have to be thinking about it. You have to be using it. You have to want to use it, because if you don't use it, I think you'll be left behind, right? If you don't use it and you stay in your spreadsheets and you say, I'm not gonna even think about the new tech that's coming out that's gonna automate things. I think at some point you're gonna get left behind. You're gonna be doing things a slow way, and this is a disruption that we have to think about, I think. So I'd say use it, but be skeptical. You can't trust it until you're spot checking things. You're making sure the information is right, especially when it comes to data and financial metrics that you're going to then release to the public or release to your customers. That's where you have to make sure you have your checks and balances.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of how we've thought about it internally as we start to figure out how do we actually start to introduce things like agents in our application or like things like that, and like using the adage of like trust but verify. So starting with proposals and saying, hey, here's what I might do in this situation, and allowing the user to kind of like check it, which I think is a good way of like trying to help people get more comfortable and also have that final say of what's going on there.
I think you all are hitting on this kind of last section we wanted to cover, which is really what we're seeing across our customers is the customers really being successful that are being proactive with AI, with automation in general, and not being reactive. To your point, Lonnie, doing the work day in and day out and not thinking maybe long term about how this could be improved or automated. So, wanted to get your advice from all of you on what you see with the customers you work with that are being proactive in this sense, and maybe what advice you'd have for folks here too.
Lonnie, do you want to
Yeah, I
kick it
could.
off?
I would say I've talked to a lot of clients about how they're using AI in their finance teams, and it's a lot of FP&A of let me run reports, let me help summarize data, so I can make decisions faster. I think those are the winners. I think they're using it as a tool, and not seeing it as a threat, using it as a tool to um, get information to the folks that need it faster, and then being able to make decisions on top of that. Um, and then yeah, to the reactive versus predictive, I think we'll start to see AI being able to be proactive, offer suggestions rather than wait for you to prompt it at some point in the future, right? I think that's where we're kind of going, where you'll wake up to say, hey, Lyndsey, here are your sales as of yesterday, and here's what we think you should do because we noticed that this SKU isn't necessarily operating as well in this jurisdiction, etc. I think that's where we're going. But yeah, um, definitely the teams that are using it to aggregate that data are going to be the winners. And I would say, just going back to be able to use it to aggregate data, you need a unified data system. You need clean data, because I think if you have data that's kind of all over the place, it's going to be really challenging for you to use it and add value.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Lonnie. I'll say the other thing too is I think this is whether there's AI or not, right? Just like trying to find, like, I'm gonna say like a few days a month, maybe a day a week, right? Set aside time to like test and experiment and to do, again, whether it's AI, new technology, because I think one of the challenges, coming from, you know, an accounting team has always been, okay, we just had like, we got to get through month end, we got to get through audit, we got to get through this diligence. And so sometimes it's hard to like take a step back and like look up and be like, hey, you know, here are the things that I want to do to improve. So next month is faster, right? And it's like, how do you just start to find those times? And I know it's really, really difficult. That is not an easy thing. But I would say, you know, that's typically, you know, when we encounter some of the strongest teams, it's, you know, hey, we've set aside this budget, we've set aside this time, right, to really invest and learn and experiment. The other two things I'll say is, one is, you know, what we talk about internally at Blue Onion, but I think, you know, is really important for this conversation of, you know, is that AI going to replace me? And from our perspective, the answer is no. AI is not going to replace you, right? Like, what you're going to come up against, and I think, Lonnie, you alluded to it, right, is like, you'll have an individual who uses AI and one who doesn't, right? Like that is going to be, I think, the differentiation, right, between, like, as you evaluate and say, like, okay, who is really adding a ton of value, who's able to do, you know, way more. And it's not going to be AI on its own. It's going to be somebody who has taken that time to experiment, to test, to learn, to really make their workflow better and faster. And then the last thing I'll say is, I actually read this, I think, in a McKinsey report, but it was super interesting because I think sometimes we're like, okay, AI is going to 10x everything that I do, right? And I think if you start with that benchmark in your head, I think that becomes like really difficult to feel like, hey, this is successful. This is a realistic hurdle. You know, what I think, at least, you know, for where we are right now is, you know, if you can start to do, you know, automate 30-40% of really those manual tasks, I think that that has been where people are finding sort of like the sweet spot right now. I think that number will eventually increase. But I think also just being able to set realistic expectations of, hey, here's what I'm trying to achieve, right? Of, you know, all of the manual work that I do today, can I get rid of 40% of that? And so we've seen really strong teams sort of do, I'm going to say, one or all three of those things, and just be really open to change and to learning too. Brian, anything to add on your
I
side?
mean, you guys are crushing it. I don't have anything to add to that, honestly.
Awesome. Great. Well, I know we are actually coming up on time, so a lot of good discussion here. And I know that Brian has been answering some of the Q&A directly as they've come in. So thank you, Brian, for being all over that. If anyone has any other specific questions, you can drop them in the QA now, or you can follow up over email, and we're happy to get those answered for you. But wanted to just provide a quick recap here of the key messages that we talked through today. And we will be sending out the recording and the deck here too. And last but not least, for our Blue Onion customers that are on the call, as our marketing team representative, I had to call this out. We are running a customer referral program now through the end of the year. So if you scan this QR code, it'll take you to a landing page where you can learn more about what we're offering. But we value and appreciate you so much, and we want to be able to help your peers be able to enjoy their holidays and their New Year's Eve this year without worrying about closing the books. So if you have a friend in your network who you know is particularly drowning or needing support with their month-end rec, I think this would be a great way to get them introduced, and we'd love to help them. So you can scan that and check it out. And also just stay in touch. I think one thing we're really prioritizing at Blue Onion is Lyndsey has a newsletter that goes out monthly that really shares a lot of these perspectives and advice she has for CFOs and heads of finance and accounting. So encourage you all to subscribe to her newsletter to stay up to date with that, and also hear about future events like this that we're doing. And encourage you all to connect with Lonnie, Brian, and Lyndsey on LinkedIn. So provided a QR code here as well to direct you to that. But would love to stay in touch with everyone here, whether you're a Blue Onion customer or not. And we really appreciate you taking the time to learn more about this report we put together, and hope you all found it helpful. Awesome. I think that's it for today. So thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Brian, Lonnie, and Lyndsey. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
everybody.